So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 54 of this series, and I am now back at home temporarily, but I can now do the second phase of pre-recorded videos for the rest of the spring semester at college. I'm going to have a whole video dedicated to this on Monday, so make sure to tune in for that. But for now, we're focusing in on WICSO. And in the last episode, we saw a few different things happen. We saw the green team kind of experiment with expansionism, more so aggression, against their neighbors over here in Persia, invading both the blue and the gold countries. We saw the brown team continue to fumble the OS. We saw the gold team do gold team things, and we saw Brazil experiment with a new ideology, taking out a country over here in South America. So if you haven't seen that already, make sure to go and watch it to recap. And if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers by this summer. And I will be honest with you, it's been 2 months since I've last recorded a video, so this is extremely weird, and I feel a little bit rusty. So hopefully it doesn't affect the videos too much, since I'm going to be recording like 20 within the next week. But otherwise, let's go ahead and jump into this video. So first things first, I want to clarify like 2 things, because I have been kind of looking at your guys' comments. I've been taking in your guys' ideas, which will help me shape this series for the next couple of episodes, but there are some things that I do want to once again go over again. So remember, the West African country over here, they have a set of nuclear submarines. They have 3 of them that were given to them by the Russians before Russia collapsed. The second thing I want to go over is something about the East Asian War. Now, this war went very bad for the Chinese when it really shouldn't have. They were the third strongest country in the world. They got jumped by Vietnam and Korea, and they really should not have lost that war to them, but they did. And that's because of 2 things. One is that their people overthrew their government when they realized that the Chinese government probably wouldn't end up winning that war. And 2, Vietnam and Korea were actually receiving supplies from an unnamed major power in the world that wasn't the old empire or Russia. So that is another little secret, more so a avenue for you guys to theorize about who it is. And I will tell you right now, it was not the brown team. I know who it is, I know who I want it to be, and I'll let you guys know at a later point in time. But for now, we got some stuff to go over in this video, like the brown team invading the British Isles. In a move that the world saw coming, well, it was pretty public that the brown team has been up to some shenanigans that ultimately are going to lead to its expansion. But these guys are going to invade the purple English country, the green Cornwall country, and then move troops all the way up into this tannish yellow country and take over all of England for themselves, leaving just themselves, Ireland, and the Scottish country in the British Isles. Here is your daily British update. Now, of course, the brown team, people have already kind of given up on the OS. As you can see, they have lost members over time. They most recently lost Korea, and with this invasion happening, a few things are going to happen. Number one, the Norwegians are going to send a letter to the brown team saying, hey, you should probably stop doing that, because if you keep doing that, we're going to get a bunch of people to jump you, so stop. And the second thing to happen is the complete collapse of the Organization of States. With the brown team's invasion of the British Isles, we see both India, China, and a series of other European countries leave the Organization of States, which officially dissolves the organization. And yeah, that's that. The Organization of States, very short-lived, and it no longer exists. Basically, this world's version of the League of Nations. And it is at this very moment that the world experiences a large shift. Nationalism begins to rise, and it begins to skyrocket to an unprecedented level. Countries are no longer very accepting of other countries. Very similar to the right-wing movements we're seeing in both America and Europe right now, but on crack, and a lot more dangerous, violent too. And all of a sudden, the world starts to look at democracy, at liberalism, at Western kind of ideology, which this world doesn't have, but its own version of it, as kind of a failing ideology that can't support their countries. People are radical. We saw this first in the gold country in Africa. We're now seeing it in the green country in Central Asia, and we've seen it in the brown country before, but now it is back in the brown country as they go expansionist and show aggression toward the rest of Europe. The age of aggression is now in its rising point. Borders close, relations are cut, and new ideologies begin to be established, but a lot of them are very similar to the ideology that we're seeing in the Horn of Africa. We're seeing the rise of fascism and National Socialism. For example, the red Australian/New Zealand country, they elect a fascist leader. In the brown team, elections are happening very soon, and there are 2 candidates One, well, we've heard this before, but there are two candidates. One who is a fascist and very anti-European values of Westernish kind of democratic liberalish ideology and pro-fascism. Our state's better than your state, so let's get rid of your state. That's kind of what he is. The other guy is just your traditional old brown team politician. Safe to say that with the rise of nationalism in the world and the growing hatred for other countries, the fascist guy is going to win his election, and the brown team becomes a fascist nation. Immediately, in the brown team and in other fascist institutions around the world, such as Brazil, Australia, Libya, and other fascist nations that I've named so far, we see the complete dissolvement of constitutions and the complete implementation of fascist regimes with only one ruler, a dictator. The brown team now has a dictator, one of the only ones in Europe. We already know that the gold team has a dictator. We got to talk about him in a second. Libya has a dictator. The purple country has a dictator. Brazil now has a dictator. And so does Australia. This growing movement is very clearly dangerous. But it's not just fascism that is rising. As we know, the brown team is very unliked in Europe. There are very many countries like Norway and the purple team who do not support their campaign of invading their weaker neighbors, and with the rise of fascism, there needs to be a counter to such an ideology, and thus we see the rise of communism/socialism. Now, I don't want to say that it's the same communism as socialism that happened in real life, specifically in the USSR. That was Marxist-Leninism, kind of weird. Not exactly how Marx described communism. They didn't do it right. So the communism that you see here isn't necessarily the same as you saw in the USSR. Maybe it's a version of communism that actually works, although that's not very possible, but you can kind of just theorize with it. Basically what we're getting here is these are left-wing ideologies, and the brown team and other fascist nations are right-wing ideologies. The purple team, and that's why I was kind of looking at it, elects a communist/socialist leader who also plunges the country into a dictatorial power. They throw out their democratic values and go down a path of regime. Soon to follow is the Farmers Union. They elect their own communist leader, but something to note about the Farmers Union is that they are kind of the founders of communism, whereas the Horn of Africa country down here, they are kind of the founders of fascism. We see the founding of communism in the Farmers Union. Ironically enough, I mean, just look at the name Farmers Union, peasants union, bourgeoisie, proletariat. You can just kind of look at the history of the white country / the Farmers Union, and you can see that yeah, these guys are always kind of left wing in a very anti-upper class country. But we now have two communist nations thus far, these two down here, and Norway is experimenting with a form of socialism which they might be implementing soon. Who knows? We'll see. We're gonna go ahead and look somewhere else now, and that's back down here to the Horn of Africa, because their military leader, the great military leader who fought off the old empire and even invaded into the peninsula, has passed away. His son comes into power, and his son is an even greater military mind, and he's also way more evil. On the very day that this guy is put into power, he declares war on the dark blue country, and this thing is absolutely steamrolled in a matter of days. It had absolutely no chance to withstand the gold team's army, and this country is very, very quickly becoming a regional power. Now, something we need to talk about with regional powers. There is no longer an old empire to keep these guys in check. The old empire prevented the green team from doing this. They prevented the brown team, to an extent, from doing what they're doing now. They prevented the gold team from doing what they're doing now, and we've seen other regional powers like India try to mitigate this and stop, but they simply are not the old empire. They don't have the power to do this. In other words, the old empire was in a way keeping the world in order, but without it, not so much. And now the question can be asked, was the old empire necessary for world peace, despite, killing millions? That's a question that I'll let you guys debate amongst yourselves. And another thing I really do want to mention this real quick too. Sorry, we'll get to a war here in a second, a very big one. But so the green team here obviously has been here since episode 1. Is it the same green team as episode 1? In my opinion, no. But if you guys want these ancient powers to still be prevalent in the modern day, which in this year is probably like 2006, 2007. If you guys want this to be the ancient green team country, you can. Once again, this is your guys' series. Your guys' ideas are the ones that drive this. You guys give me ideas and I implement them. So really, I only kind of provide the lore, you guys provide everything else, the filler. So if you want this to be the ancient Green Team country, go right ahead. If you want this to be the same Greek country that was invaded by the old empire at one point, go ahead. If you want this to be the purple country from episode 1, you have the right to feel that way. I'm not going to tell you what is and what isn't for these countries, but I will just simply provide the lore and what you're seeing on the screen. So I did just want to clear that up real quick. Anyway, back to the video, because we have a major development happening in West Africa. Something big is about to happen. The West African country is also going through elections. Now, these guys are a flawed democracy. They've had the same leader since World War III. And we know World War III ended in 2000. It was a 10-year war starting in 1990. So yeah, it ended in 2000. It's currently 2006. They have elections every 4 years, and the same guy has been there since then. So obviously this guy has been skipping elections since the 90s. But he is at a point now where he is too old to run the country, and he steps down from power and finally decides to follow his country's constitution and allow for elections. And what would you know? The nationalism in this country is just as high as everyone else's. In fact, it's probably worse than everyone else's. We have 3 candidates on the block. We have one guy who is, he's kind of like I don't want to say he's a centrist, but he's like kind of in between on communism and fascism. He's like a middle ground guy. He's like, I understand this about that and that about this, but how about we just kind of do a little bit of both? That's impossible, but just pretend. And then you have your 2 other leaders. These guys are the radical leaders. You have the communist and you have the fascist. Knowing the history and the past of the West African country, we can assume who's going to win. And yes, it's the fascist. He comes into power, immediately burns the constitution at the inauguration, and declares himself the eternal ruler of the West African country. People have some mixed reactions about this declaration, but what he does next is, well, the very definition of the age of aggression. He declares that his country deserves better. He declares that this country has been wronged by a familiar face. This country, despite winning a war of independence against its former self, is not done just yet. The Declaration of Independence was just the first part. This leader wants to reclaim all of the African Union under one union, which is his union. West Africa declares war on the Mediterranean country. And it's not just West Africa. Libya is involved as well. And with no old empire coming to save the Mediterranean country, it's not going to look good for these guys. In his inaugural speech, I don't know if I want to call it an inaugural speech because he's a dictator, but in his rise to power and his, I guess, placement in the office, he declares war upon the Mediterranean country. And to this, the people cheer. Once again, nationalism and hate for other countries at an all-time high, which is making people make these decisions to elect these kind of people, and they are in support of these crazy ideas, which are just unprecedented. In other words, the age of democracy is dead. The age of diplomacy is dead. The world is reverting. West African troops immediately storm in to the Mediterranean country and meet an army that is completely demoralized. The Mediterranean country is seen as kind of like the last beacon of hope for democracy in Africa and in the Mediterranean world, with the rise of communism in Italy and of course the rise of fascism and the brown team. It's only a matter of time until these other countries follow suit in ideological shifts. The Mediterranean country, though, was very proud of its democratic values. And notice how I said was, because they are fighting a losing war. Libya, with help from the Gold Country, has revolutionized its military into one that isn't just a laughing matter. Remember, Libya has been thrown around a lot in history, especially by some powers in Mesopotamia, but those powers are long gone. So with the help of his friend over in the Horn, Libya is doing great damage to the Mediterranean country. Very quickly, the West Africans go after the major city down here in the middle of the African Union, taking it and pretty much severing a lot of, I guess, infrastructure connecting the north of the Mediterranean country to the south down here in the desert. We also see the West Africans expand out from this major city, going right over towards Libya, who eventually does the same and connects up with them, disconnecting the country into 2 pieces. And from here, a campaign is made to connect up in the middle, and this goes extremely well. Down south, well, yeah, there's no armies down here. And with the help of their ally in the purple country, Libya makes excursions from their borders, kind of similar to what Russia has done from Belarus in real life. And this area is gone within a few days. It's not well protected at all. Up north though, it's a little bit of a different story. The Mediterranean country isn't just going to be pushed over. They managed to push back over here in the west and take 2 major cities, but in the south they do continue to struggle against a red Libyan team who is now getting volunteer troops from the gold country all the way over in the Horn of Africa, and this is very sad. This is a sad day. Next thing you know, the purple team is invading Sardinia. These guys just love to take over land that's going to be lost anyway. In the Mediterranean country, in one last ditch effort to take back its major cities and rally its people, will make a sweeping campaign against the Libyans, costing them hundreds of thousands of troops. On both fronts, they do manage to take back this major city as well, although it's not going to be of much use since once again they have lost all of their southern area. But unfortunately for the Mediterranean country, that's pretty much all they had. There's no gas left in the tank, and the West Africans start sweeping through. Eventually, the Mediterraneans completely abandon their southern half of remaining land and fall back to the 4 major cities that they have within their country. From here, it's a series of small battles with lots of casualties, but at the end of the day, they're unable to stop the advancing armies. The Libyans encircle a major city in the south, and the West Africans capture one in the north, and eventually the Mediterranean country surrenders. One of the oldest democracies in Africa is gone. The country that both pushed for and helped with the decolonization of Africa is gone. Africa has just lost probably its greatest country in the series thus far in terms of what it has done for the continent. In I guess decolonization would be the only thing they've really done, but that's a huge thing. But it's gone. And now it's time for the peace treaty, which will divide this thing into 2 pieces. And in this peace treaty here, we can see exactly how it is divided. I do want to point out though that there was a new province created. It's this one right here. This was made just so the borders don't look horrendous. But otherwise, we have the peace treaty going something like this, with the Libyan country getting all of this very valuable land up here. This will help their economy tremendously, taking over some very valuable and already economically developed land from the Mediterranean country. And then we have the West Africans taking over everything else, taking the capital of the Mediterranean country, which is seen as a great accomplishment for this new leader. But down here, we also see the creation of a new country, which is going to be the pink team. Now, these guys are kind of just like a buffer state in a way. They don't even have any major cities, I don't think. No. So let's go ahead and just build them one right here, which will also be their capital. But now Northern Africa looks something like this. But we're not done just yet, because guess who is joining the Parallelogram Alliance? It is going to be none other than the West African country, which is now the only remaining remnant of the African Union. And I forgot Sardinia again. That goes over to the purple team. But this is what our new map of Africa is looking like. And this is the new major power alliance in it. A good name for these guys would be the Axis, I guess, since, you know, in real life, the Axis was fascist and national socialist. Not really interchangeable, but very similar, but also not very similar. It's weird. Italy had fascism, Germany had national socialism, but they kind of just worked together in a way. So I don't know, I'll let you guys debate, whatever, it doesn't matter. The fascist front, the Axis, like I said. But that's not all. The West African country wants to help out their new allies in a way, so they will allow them entry into their economical alliance. Remember, this is a currency alliance. So these guys will be getting a new currency, one that is a lot stronger than their current currencies, and this will help them rebuild after the great collapse that we saw from World War III. But now we have one final event taking place in this video, and it happens over here in Poland. Poland is terrified. Poland just became a country again. I guess this is actually more so Poland, Lithuania, but still, I'm just gonna call it Poland. But these guys, very similar to real life Poland. They haven't been free a whole bunch of times. They're, you know, a historical country, got swallowed up by surrounding powers, more so the brown team in Russia, but actually no, that happened in real life too. But then they got their independence at a certain point, got swallowed up again, but now they're back. And they really don't want to disappear again because, you know, no country wants to disappear. And they're terrified of the brown team because if you look at who the brown team borders, they border Italy. You can't go to war with Italy because you would be going to war with the whole square team alliance, and that would be very counterproductive. I'll say that, counterproductive. You can go after France, but France is kind of friendly with you. They're kind of like your lapdog. You don't want to invade your lapdog. You can go after Ireland, but that would probably be the breaking point for a coalition to form, because Ireland has just been chilling. You know, they don't even do anything anymore. They're just chilling. Yeah, they haven't had a war in ages. So don't invade them. That's probably not a good idea. And obviously don't invade Norway. You can go after the Farmers Union, but obviously don't invade them either because, hey, You can see the Square Team alliance on the screen. So that leaves just Poland. And I don't think Poland is in favor of that. So they're going to do the smart move. And Poland will enter the alliance of the Square Team. Meaning that now the Brown Team is completely surrounded on all sides by the Square Team. Other than here, but ignore that. They are kind of feeling like how Russia says they feel in real life right now with NATO. They're like, hey, you're expanding around my borders. Are you going to jump me? Man, maybe I should go invade an independent sovereign nation so they don't join that alliance. And then I'm going to have the USA back me because I don't know. You see the real life analogy there? Anyway, but in all seriousness and in this series, Poland joins the Square Team out of fear that the Brown Team will invade them. And the Brown Team's reaction to this isn't too nice. They're basically saying, hey, are you guys going to gang up on me? But the Square Team will come out and say that their alliance is completely defensive. They have no offensive mechanisms within their alliance. Basically, it's an attack one, attack all alliance, very similar to NATO in real life. So that's going to do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. Once again, this is my first episode back. This is my first time recording in like 2 months. And I do want to say here that this will be the last mapping video that you see that is not a pre-recorded video, unfortunately. Next Wednesday's video is going to be recorded between now and then because I have to get like 20 episodes out. So I'm going to start recording as soon as possible so I don't overstress myself and get super tired in the videos like I did with the last batch. But once again, make sure to tune in on Monday to see the well, it's going to be called an update or something. I don't know. But it's going to be an important video talking about the channel from here on out. Very exciting stuff, I think. Very important stuff. But also just tune into the video because you're not going to want to miss it, basically. I do want to comment on some current world events right now. Last time I recorded a video, there was a different president in the US. That has changed now. And I just want to say that I don't know. I don't know what to say, actually. It's concerning in a way of some of the rhetoric towards Europe. And this is, I guess, more geared towards the Western audience that I have, but more so Europeans. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really support abandoning allies. Now, Ukraine is a topic which we can talk about. I've stated my opinion on Ukraine before. Obviously, Russia invaded Ukraine for whatever reason they might claim, but the main basis that needs to be said is that Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine didn't start the war. Basic knowledge, basic facts. That's the ground. We're setting the ground, okay? Anyway, that's probably the most controversial thing you'll probably ever hear me say in a video that isn't meant to be controversial. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, make sure to show some support, liking, subscribing. Trying to get to 200K by the end of the summer. I don't know if that's possible, but with the plan that I have for the channel, which I'll talk about in Monday's video, hint, hint, it might be possible. That's enough rambling for me. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video, which is on Monday. So check out the Monday video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Serminator, Hyper, King Cheese, Freezioid, Big Red Plays, Laser Tase, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, Connor the Gamer, CTG on YT, Johnny XX7, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.